Hi, I'm Delaney Scully, and this is my informative speech. So, this is on deaf communication. How a deaf person uses other nonverbal cues to communicate effectively. So, my general purpose is to inform the audience about deaf communication and specifically how a deaf person communicates effectively through nonverbal cues from others. A deaf person is able to read other people's nonverbal cues in order to communicate effectively and successfully. I've imagined not being able to fully hear or fully speak. Do you think it would be more difficult to understand what people are trying to communicate to you, or more difficult and frustrating to try to communicate your feelings and your thoughts to others? So, reasons to listen. There are deaf communication is very unique in that they use nonverbal cues so heavily and can communicate successfully still without fully hearing or speaking. And I think it's can be beneficial if you maybe pick up more on these subtle facial and body expressions and the importance of other little nonverbal cues, because it can make a difference in your own life of communication. And secondly, there are 600,000 deaf people in the United States, and you're bound to encounter one of a deaf person. And if you do, and maybe you'll know some more about their communication in order to try to communicate with them effectively and make it easier on yourself. So a deaf person is able to read other people's nonverbal cues in order to communicate successfully and effectively. I am credible for this because firstly, I think it's deaf communication is very unique, and I was very intrigued by it because it's such a different way of communicating, and it must be so difficult, but that's all they've ever known, really. So, and I think it's cool how we could probably take something from how they communicate to increase the effectiveness of our communication. And secondly, I have researched and read many papers and articles on deaf communication. So my main points. So firstly, we're going to talk about how facial and body expressions, how they read those, and how that plays a part into how they communicate. Secondly, the importance of touch. And thirdly, the importance of consistent and intentful eye contact. So a deaf person is able to read other people's nonverbal cues in order to communicate effectively and successfully. So my first point is reading body language and facial expressions to communicate. So a deaf person picks up on very subtle movements of the facial movements and body movements. So for example, quick choppy movements of your face, they can read as anger, and smooth and relaxed movements they read as as a person being happy and content. Faster and slightly erratic movements they read as someone being excited. And then going along with the gestures, like a fist clench, like yes, or waving your arms like no, 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 no. That's how they pick up on those. And secondly, the tone of face is so important when in between deaf communication, or just like when if you're talking to a deaf person, because from the sscc.edu, some hearing people don't use much of their face or body to communicate, which to a deaf person makes the hearing seem lifeless or lacking emotion. So if you don't have any facial or body expressions, it's kind of hard for them to pick up on how you're feeling, kind of what your whole thought process is. Because it's easy to tell when someone is happy, sad, disgusted based on their facial expressions. So if there are no facial expressions, if you're a plain slate, and if your body is just kind of like normal, and you're not really putting any more effort into anything, then it's kind of hard for them to pick up on those cues. Secondly, let's talk about the importance of touch. So my second point is how the importance of touch, how important it is to the deaf community. So touch is used to greet, say goodbye, get attention, and express emotion. So touch also shows this part of communication that is proximity. And so that's basically, say I'm not really comfortable with this person touching me. I might distance myself from them, not really let them in my personal space. But if I was comfortable with someone touching me and I wanted them to maybe give me a hug, I'd get in their personal space, let them in mine, and they would understand that it's okay for them to touch me and for them to have contact with me. So for a deaf person, they can read that on another person, because it's this proximal communication that they understand on how to, if it's okay, let them understand if it's okay to like touch or not touch or how, and they communicate that to others too. So also touch has been shown to be perceived differently by the deaf. So in a study done by the National Health Institute shows that people born deaf process touch differently. So they use the auditory cortex, which is which is in the auditory system, which is like your ear right here. And it performs basic and higher functions in hearing to process their touch. So lastly, we're going to talk about how eye contact is very important. So the importance of consistent and intentful eye contact. So ordinary eye contact, like good eye contact, like consistent, means to them that you're listening, you're honest, you're confident, and you're respectful. You're being respectful to them. And maybe an eye gaze, you're not really being consistent or intentful with your eye contact. They can understand that maybe you're lying, you're being deceptive, or you're nervous, or you're shy, which may not make the conversation or a conversation between two deaf people very comfortable. And secondly, deaf people highly value face-to-face communication. They highly value this eye contact because they listen through their eyes mostly. So broken or lack of eye contact is understood as an indifference or disinterest to them, which is kind of hard because maybe you don't feel that way, or maybe you're not intending to do that, but to them, that's how they understand it. So it's really important to have eye contact. And this is from The Power of Nonverbal Communication, which is an article. A deaf person cannot look at an object and at the same time listen to you describe how to use it. So it's just important to remember when encountering a deaf person that they communicate differently, and that you have to go slower and do things at different times, and just be smart with your communication. So let's review my main points. So firstly, we talked about the importance of facial and body movements. Secondly, we talked about the importance of touch. And lastly, we talked about the importance of consistent and intentful eye contact. So the deaf communicate successfully through nonverbal cues of others, and they read those to communicate effectively. So I hope this speech helped you understand a little bit more about deaf communication and the importance of it, because it can really, if you take these aspects of deaf communication and maybe apply them to your own communication within your own life, reading the body movements and the facial expressions and the proximal communication and the importance of touch and focusing on your eye contact and how important that is, it can really enhance your communication through just these simple little tweaks in it. And I hope that if you ever encounter a deaf person, maybe you're more comfortable in that conversation and know more about what you need to do in that, and help you just learn more about deaf communication, how they are successful in it. Thank you.